What's it like living as a female expat in Asia? Is life like White Lotus, or is it a little bit grittier than that? Well, if any of those questions have occurred to you, fantastic, you're in the right place. My name is Wendy, and for more than 3 decades, I've lived and worked in Asia. And I still live and work in Asia now in Thailand. And today I want to talk about this idea that is sometimes thrown at expats, is that they live in a bubble. All expats live in a bubble. So, do we? Well, let's look at this realistically, shall we? And remember that this is just my opinions because this is my channel, but this is also my experience. When I was first an expat back at the end of the 80s and into the 90s, and then subsequent to that, that's how old I am, communication was not so easy. So I remember that we used to call our family on a Sunday because it was cheaper, and there used to be these little beep, 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 beep noises to remind you of how much money you were spending on that call. I even used to send postcards back to people to show them what my lifestyle was like. This is the days of actual film when you sent, films off to be developed and the photos came back. That's how old I am. So that was the early days. And it was easy to live in a bubble then because we were quite disconnected from what was happening at home, unless, we read a local newspaper or you could get the BBC. But then came 24 hours of news, whether you want to blame, CNN or whoever it is, that came on board. And after that, things changed because they needed a lot of content to go on and on and on to show us what was happening. And it would be next to impossible to have lived in a bubble at that time. For full disclosure, my background is in media. So in Hong Kong and Australia, I worked in the radio industry. And in Hong Kong, I was also a newsreader on the radio. So I've actually seen the live wires feeds as they come down. And any journo will tell you that there is shit going down on this planet day and night in every corner of the world. And obviously, if you're living in the States, you get American news. If you're living in Zimbabwe, you get Zimbabwean news. If you're living in Thailand, you get Thai news, as well as the international news. So living in a bubble, well, it's already kind of sorted out for you anyway. You're actually being directed by the media into things that are, more dramatic, that are going to keep you watching the news in the first place. So you're already living in a sort of a bubble, a kind of a curated kind of news bubble for yourself anyway, unless you really reach out and try and find different sources. So the accusation is not necessarily wrong. I think it's just a little bit misguided because these days, of course, you can get newspapers in every language. Countries like Singapore or Hong Kong, they're English-speaking places, so you are going to get all of the news in English all of the time. But here in Thailand, do I know what's happening in the local government? Yeah, I do, because there's an English newspaper here too. So I can read that, or online. You don't have to read newspapers. You read newspapers, online newspapers. You're going to see what's going on. There are local online newspapers. Even where I live, there's a local newspaper that tells me, when the roads are being dug up or whatever. What I'm not privy to all of the time, and this year I was in the States visiting my daughter, and what I'm not privy to, or what I don't indulge in, is that kind of manic news that, on and on and on, over dramatized, talking heads, opinion-based news stories, because I choose not to go into it. And in Western countries, it's very hard to escape because it's not one channel, it's like millions of channels. So you're constantly bombarded with what's going on. And it is dramatic. I'm not saying that the news isn't bad or extraordinarily horrifying, but what I'm saying is how much you indulge in it then becomes sort of a choice, keeping in mind that a lot of it is curated for you anyway, and these days very opinion driven. So it's a kind of a fair accusation on the one hand, but on the other, if you take a look at where we are on the planet right now, knowing that there's always nonsense going on, really horrible things that happen, and loads of good things as well, you could fairly say that as an expat, because we can step away from that constant bombardment of news, and because we don't speak the local language, so or if we do, maybe not as well, so we might not be listening to the local radio station that's speaking in the local language, then yeah, there is a slight bubble effect. I'm not going to lie about that. And here's my question to you as an expat. Is that so bad? Because honestly, there's not a lot I can do to change a lot of what's going on this planet right now. And a lot of it is quite bad news. So I can dip in, I can support where I can support, and I can step away just as easily. And you know something? That's one of the great things about being an expat. I hope that clears it up for you in a little way. That's just my opinion anyway. I hope you have yourself a beautiful day. I'm going to turn around now so you can see the sunrise. There she is. Have a good one. Stay safe. Take care. Bye bye.